What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Big Five Pod, episode number 86. My first one in a little bit. It feels really good to be back. Life has been kind of crazy lately. All good things, though. So we're happy to be back, though. I'm, of course, your co-host, Kyle Morello. And next to me, the one who has been here this whole time, keeping you guys updated on everything Big Five related, doing interviews. He's the man. You know him all that well. Jake Copestick. How we doing?
Hi, we're doing well. Doing well. Feels like it's been a while. We had a fun weekend down the shore last week.
Oh, yeah.
Know you've been busy with the union as they chug along through the summer. But yeah, we're doing well. At the time that this episode comes out, the interview with John Dunleavy from last week will already be out. I highly suggest you take a listen to that. I talked with John for almost an hour and a half. I mean, we had a really, really good conversation. He's very, very knowledgeable recruiting, not only just in the Philadelphia area, but really, really nationally. And that goes high school, that goes college. I mean, he's got a bunch of connections and is very, very knowledgeable of a bunch of different areas, bunch of different players. So interviewed him about the freshmen incoming in the Big Five. Listen to that. If you don't know who these guys are already, get familiar with them because I'm sure you'll be hearing about some of these guys in the next year or two and beyond. So really excited for that interview to come out. It was a really good conversation with John, but Kyle, we're back, and because it's been a long layoff, we have quite a bit to talk about.
We're back. What it do, baby? Yeah, we do indeed have a lot to talk about. So, Cope, why don't we get right into it? You know what time it is. It's Cope's quick hitters. Get that basketball. I know you have it because you were flashing it before we started here. So get that ball ready, run that break. What do you got?
So first, before I start, I have my Bryce Harper jersey on. Shout out to the Philadelphia Phillies, the best team in baseball. 23 games over 500. Just swept the defending champ Texas Rangers in 3 games at Citizens Bank Park. Kyle, you can put your thumbs down all you want, but your New York Mets are dog shit, are
I
total
know.
dog shit right now, and can't hold a candle to the Phils.
Listen,
23 games over 500.
I've had other things I've been focusing on. Unfortunately, one of them is done now with my New York Knicks, but the Rangers still in it, Eastern Conference Finals. We don't need to talk about the Mets. Listen, Phillies are a great team right now. I have to give credit where credit's due. I hate them and I hope they fail. That's all I have to say.
All right, we'll move on. Thank you for that. We'll start. Really big news today, Kyle. Totally trumps anything, really, all the rest of the combined news that we have. The NCAA and the Power Five conferences agreed to a deal that will lead to schools being able to pay players directly. The years of amateurism, the years of the student athlete, Kyle, they're done. They're done. The NCAA and its 5 power conferences agreed to allow schools to directly pay players. This is the first time in the 100-year plus history of college sports. Through an article written today, at the time of this recording, Kyle, it's not even 2.5 hours before we started. This article was published by Dan Murphy and Pete Damel of ESPN. So there is a antitrust case against the NCAA where they're going to have to pay out $2.7 billion plus in damages over the next 10 years to past and current athletes. Past athletes can join a class action lawsuit where it's kind of interesting when you get down to the nitty gritty. And I don't know anything about legal jargon and like the law side of things. I just don't. But I'll do my best to try and decipher this to you the best I can. But over the next 10 years, they're going to pay this out. And if you are eligible to be paid out, you'll get paid out, obviously once every 10 years. But it's pretty interesting to see that when you put your name in, they're actually going to bring a sports economist in who's going to kind of determine how much you're supposed to be owed. And that could go into your, how many stars of a recruit you were, your snap count, your playing time. Yeah, it's pretty interesting how this, could amount to people that put their name in. But there could be quite a few people that are going to put their name in for this, Kyle. I think that number is going to be quite large. And the NCAA is going to pay out nearly $3 billion for that. So we knew it was coming. Obviously, with NIL, there was reports that some schools kind of wanted to break off into their own super conference. I believe it was about a year ago, and be able to pay their own players and decide how many staff members they can have on respective sports staffs. So this was coming, but it's here. It's here, and I think the terms of this agreement really are going to be wrapped up, if not tomorrow. It seems like in the next couple of days. So crazy that the days of amateurism are over. Student athletes no longer gonna be a thing. They're basically going to be employees now. They're going to be employees. So how that will affect NIL, how that will affect the transfer portal, because now that you're going to be a contracted employee, if you enter a binding agreement for 2 years, you're not going to be able to leave. You're going to be in school for 2 years. So the ramifications of this are so large, probably even more large, Kyle, than we even realize right now. But
There's
there
no
will
way we
be,
can grasp it right now.
yeah, there's no way that to kind of forecast the areas of college athletics that this could touch, because this is absolutely huge. I mean, this is something that didn't happen for 100 plus years. So, as that evolves, we'll keep you up to date on that. But this is literally the most breaking news, that we have today. And that's a pretty big ruling. So how about that? Student athletes, amateurism gone. I mean, these athletes now are going to be paid employees of their respective university. So huge ruling today from the NCAA. We'll get into some coaching news now and more general stuff. Kevin Voigt, who was a walk-on for Villanova for the 2020, 2021, and 2021-2022 seasons, he has just been named an assistant coach and director of operations for George Halkovich's staff up at Buffalo for as your dad says, the UB Bulls.
UB
So
Bulls, parents' alma
Voigt was a
mater.
GA at Villanova the last 2 seasons. He just got an MBA actually this month and graduated from Villanova with that MBA. He is going to join the Villanova connections. They surely run deep there, because not only do you have Voigt, you have George Halkovich, but he's going to join Tim Saunders, who was on the 2018 national champion team, who's the video coordinator right now for Buffalo. So a lot of Villanova guys up there. The Villanova influence is certainly heavy up in Buffalo. And another little tidbit on Voigt here. He's from Massapequa, not in Long Island, Kyle, but on Long Island. So he's going back to his home state of New York.
Although
Next,
very
really
far from
cool.
each other.
Yeah, I mean, totally on opposite. You
Yeah.
can't really get more opposite than that, really. I don't think you actually, quite literally, I don't think you can get more opposite than that in the state of New York.
Maybe Manhattan, but it's awfully close.
Yeah, it's pretty
I'm not
close.
looking at a map right now, but I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
basically, like if I said, he's from Philly, but he's going to work in Pittsburgh. It's almost
Yeah.
a drive sort of like that.
Or Erie.
But anyway, Phil Martelli Jr., how about this, guy? This is a really cool connection. Phil Martelli Jr. has hired former St. Joe's Hawks star Ryan Daly as an assistant coach at Bryant. Martelli Jr. took over at Bryant in the wake of Jared Grasso resigning and stepping down as the head coach of the Bulldogs. Ryan Daly, of course, was one of the first guys on Billy Lang's teams. I mean, he was there the year after he got to St. Joe's, right after Martelli got fired, and really helped build the foundation for St. Joseph's. I mean, he got a shot with the Windy City Bulls of the G League. Was a summer league guy for the Bulls as well. And he's young. He's only 26. He spent the last 2 years with Dwayne Killings at Albany for the Great Danes, and by all accounts, Kyle, this is a rising star and a spectacular recruiter in the industry. So for him to join another guy with Big Five roots, it's really cool to see. This is quite a connection for Ryan Daly as he progresses. And done so at a pretty good pace to only be 26, and it seems like that's not going to slow down anytime soon. This is a dude that clearly knows how to recruit and connect with players, being a former player himself. So let's move on to some scheduling news. We have quite a bit here. Temple, they're going to play Boston College in the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame Showcase at Mohegan Sun Arena in Uncasville, Connecticut. That event will be played Saturday, November 23rd and Sunday, November 24th. The event also features UMass, was going to feature Providence, who just pulled out, and I think they're going to the battle for Atlantis, I believe. So there's a team that needs to be put in there to finalize the event. I had put Providence in there as a note because I thought that could be a really good non-conference matchup for Temple if they were to play them, but they've since put out and are looking for a 14. But Temple will play Boston College and will play the UMass and or another team to be named. St. Joseph's, we already know they're going to be playing at it's not the Empire Classic, whatever it is. They're playing at the MTE at the Barclays Center in New York, where it's Syracuse, Texas, and Texas Tech up there, I believe. So really good MTE for them. So we already know a little bit of their non-conference schedule. They're going to host Coppin State Tuesday, November 26th at Hagan Arena. They lead the all-time series 2-1. How about this for a nugget? After I retweeted the Rocco Miller tweet of Coppin State finalizing their non-conference schedule, where they were going to play St. Joe's, Aaron Bracey jumped in. He said that he was there for their first ever meeting in 1995 in the NIT, where Coppin State came to St. Joseph's. That was Phil Martelli's last game as an assistant coach for St. Joseph's before he ended up taking over. So how about that for a little tidbit?
Wow.
Their last meeting was in Baltimore. on December 4th, 2012, a 67-55 win for the Hawks. And who was on that team? Seems like forever ago, even though these names are pretty recent. Langston Galloway, Ronald Roberts, Halil Kanasevic, CJ Aiken, and Carl Jones. Feels like forever, man. That game was played 12 years ago this year, which is crazy to think about because it feels like those guys, feels like forever, but also feels like they just played it at St. Joe's. And then lastly, LaSalle. Today announced they're going to participate in the Boardwalk Battle in Daytona Beach, Florida this upcoming year. Now, the Twitter account for the Boardwalk Battle said they're going to announce teams day by day, which will culminate in the bracket then coming out. So we'll keep you updated on who's in LaSalle's bracket, who looks like they're going to play. But as of right now, there's no dates, there's no bracket. The only two other teams that we know that are participating in this event are Stetson and Toledo. So Toledo been a really good program in the MAC. Obviously, Stetson and Donnie Jones just made the tournament this past year from the A-Sun. So a couple good mid-major teams in there as well, but TBD to see who else is there participating with LaSalle. And with that, Kyle, well, actually, I have one more thing for you, some personal news before we get into talking about Big Five transfers. Shout out to everybody at Penn the last 2 years I've been there. I've loved working for the team and being at such a great university. I'm a Big Five transfer myself, going from LaSalle to Temple, and I'm headed home, Kyle. I'm going back to Temple.
Woo!
As an assistant equipment manager. This is the only Temple hat I could find in my vicinity because I took this off the chair next to me when we were there for the South Florida game. But I'm going to be back at Temple. Tuesday, June 4th is my first day as an assistant equipment manager. Shout out to Liz. Shout out to everybody at Temple who got me through there. But shout out to everybody at Penn. Cody, Josh LaRosa, Jordan, Elias, everybody with the football programs. Too many people to name. I could be here till the wee hours in the morning thanking everyone. But I am moving on from Penn. I'm going back home to Temple. I'm going back to our alma mater. So for some personal news for that. So with that, we can actually get to the important transfers that people care about, Kyle. Kick it back to you.
First of all, I must say, even though I said this to you already, but congratulations. It is definitely quite an accomplishment. I know you enjoyed your time very much at Penn. I know they'll miss you over there. I know you'll miss being there. But very excited times await for you at Temple back at home. So very excited for you. And yeah, listen, just means more opportunities for you to get some Raising Canes, get some Richies. Trying to think of what else is in there. I mean, you've got the Sack, you've got Morgan Lower. I mean, you got all the food options. Temple's got some great food options. Of course,
Why the hell did you name Morgan Lower? Oh, Morgan. If you said Morgan
Lower,
Upper,
not Morgan Dining Hall. Morgan Lower.
Sorry.
We got Chick-fil-A. There used to be the Tony Luke's in there. I don't know if Tony Luke's is in there anymore. It's been quite some time since
I think that
we've been
lasted
there.
only a year.
Oh, damn.
Yeah.
Yikes. Of course, the halal food trucks, which we both know and love very well, all around campus. So very excited for you to be back there. And it'll be a lot easier for us to get the Leah Core Center too.
Oh yeah. So, and I'll be eating good.
You'll be eating good. Philly style, of course. I mean, you want to talk about Temple games, you got Philly style right there too. So, all right, Cope. With that, let's get into some portal madness. Of course, the portal is closed. It's been closed for I think a couple weeks now, a few weeks now. So people aren't entering, but people are committing. They're going places. Decisions are being made. So let's get right into them. No news on the Drexel front. So we're gonna skip Drexel for right now. We're gonna go to the other side of Market Street though. We're gonna go to Penn. They did land a commitment from Triton College, Illinois, Dylan Williams, which is a JUCO college if you aren't familiar. Williams averaged 15 points, shot 40% from three last year. And Triton, very, very good team in the JUCO ranks. They went 34-3. They made the JUCO national championship before losing to Barton. So obviously no scrub here. He's a guy who could score. He's a guy who could shoot the basketball. Penn obviously needing that. They lost Clark Slacker. They lost Tyler Perkins. The loss is going to look a lot different this year. They're going to need some scoring punch. They're going to need some shooting. What exactly can Williams provide coming over from the JUCO ranks over to the Ivy League coach?
Yeah, well, as a point guard and losing Clark Slacker, it's huge to bring in a guy like this who's already got some college experience under his belt, and he's going to bring some shooting as well. I mean, if you watch this guy, he can shoot it off the bounce at 40% from three is really, really good. Don't know if we'll shoot that in the Ivy League because the Ivy League, as good as it's been, it's going to have a down year this coming year. But last year, very, very formidable top three. And the last couple of years, Kyle, been a very, very good league.
Yeah.
It has been. Like, there's no slouch league to go into. For the most part, you get older guys, they're developed, good coaches, guys that play together. It's a really, really good league. But as far as a positional fit with Clark Slacker on the way out and a guy that can shoot the ball, and create for himself and get into the teeth of the defense, and a pretty fast guy as well. Positional need, shooting need with the skill. It remains to be seen. What I have no idea what this team is going to look like, Kyle.
I mean,
There's 17 guys going to be on this team next year. I talked about this with John last week, and obviously with the Ivy League, it's the one league that it's it the transfer portal is not necessarily relevant with them a ton. Now you have Penn that's going to bring in Michael Zanoni and Dylan Williams and Ethan Roberts, as well as bring in freshmen. But this is a league that just you bring in 3 to 4 guys, maybe more every year, and then you just stockpile it and you build it that way. It's the only league where you have that kind of mold anymore. And there's 17 guys on this team. You have incoming freshmen. You have 3 transfers coming in. You have a bunch of guys that are staying because they have guys. They retain their talent like the Ivy League does. It's tough to say what this team is going to look like with that many guys on the team. But as a guy that's been on a really successful JUCO team, especially last year, and with his scoring ability and his shooting ability, there's certainly a path for him to get on the floor. I don't, and I not only do I not know what it's going to look like, but unless we're able to interview Steve Donahue until I see them start playing or hear about how they do it at scrimmages and stuff like that, I don't know what this team's going to look like. I can't tell you definitively what this guy's role is going to be, but positional need and the shooting, like I said, there's certainly a pathway for this guy to get on the floor with his college experience.
listen, Cope, it looks like at some point we're gonna have to interview Coach Donahue then to find out what this team's gonna be all about this year. Maybe not at this very moment of time. We still have obviously a few months until even they start reporting for all these practices and everything, get ready for the season. I don't know if I want to say training camp. I don't know if that's the right word for it in the college, but uh, I don't know what this team's going to look like. But I do know that adding someone who can score, who can shoot, and who's been a winner in the past is definitely not a bad thing at all. So yes, there might be some question marks for Penn going into the year, but at least they're trying to retool in a way where they're trying to replicate success that they've had in the past with certain guys. So we'll see what happens. It'll definitely be interesting to see, but uh not a bad get at all for Penn. All right, let's scoot up Broad Street real quick. We're gonna go, of course, to what you mentioned, our Temple Owls. We're partial to all teams. We just graduated from Temple. That's what that is. And now obviously Cope working there. But anyway, Fordham transfer, Elijah Gray committing to Temple. Averaged around 8 points, around a little under 4 rebounds a game last season for Fordham in the A10. Listen, Cope, we've talked about it on this podcast, and we'll probably still talk about it some more even after this. But Temple has needed bigs for quite some time. They did very well in the guard transfer market. That's for damn sure. Bigs were definitely a question mark. It did look like Steve Settle was going to have to play the 5 at one point, which is probably not what you want. I mean, maybe in spurts, can shoot the ball. He's tall, but uh, getting a big guy like Elijah Gray in here is definitely important for Adam Fisher and company. And then on the other side of it, we mentioned guards Jordan Riley withdrawing his name from the NBA draft, but not coming back to Temple. He's going to Temple's foe in the American, and he's going down to East Carolina, down there in North Carolina, the state of North Carolina, that is. Going to be playing for the Pirates next year. So I'm gonna say I was a little surprised by that, to be honest with you. I didn't think he would stay in the NBA draft, but I thought if he wasn't going to be in the NBA draft, he'd be back in cherry and white, and that's not the case for next year. He's going to East Carolina. So Cope, let's talk about the big men first before we get into Jordan Riley. How important is this commitment for Adam Fisher and company, knowing that they needed a big man for quite some time?
Yeah, I mean, just the fact they have a body there is enormous because, like you said, like it was Steve Settle and really wasn't anybody else. With the freshmen they have coming in and Dylan Battie and Aiden Tobias, and you don't have a center. Until getting Elijah Gray, they didn't have one. So just to have a body there is big. He didn't log a ton of minutes last year at Fordham, but just for a guy that's big, the percentages aren't great, but he can step out and hit a 3. You're going to have guys that can spread the floor. You're going to have a guy like Glenn Greer that can put pressure, on the rim and get into the paint. So is this a guy that can thrive off some dump down passes and some lobs? Like the offensive role doesn't have to be huge because you have scorers, you have shooters, you have playmakers on the outside. You just need a big body inside. You got to be able to rebound. You got to have a guy to go up against opposing bigs, clean up some misses, and take advantage of guys who are going to be able to penetrate and get inside the paint and get inside the 3-point line. So It's just big that they have a body here. Um, I would think his role is whatever Temple like they're projecting a bigger role for him because he only allowed not even 20 minutes a game last year. And I would think that with their need for a big, they just lost out on Josh Gray from South Carolina. I think he's going to Mizzou, who they were in on for a little bit. So, as the transfer big men start to shrink a little bit, it looks like he's going to be in line for quite a bit of minutes here, unless they decide to play small with Steve Settle or somebody else. So just the fact they got a big guy and they have a body there, it makes me feel better because for a while it was like, okay, we're gonna have threes and fours having to play the five here. So good on them getting Elijah Gray here. As he starts to play more and is going to have the opportunity to play a lot more. We'll see what he can do. But for now, just to have a body there is huge.
Yeah, literally and figuratively. Listen, small ball works. There's definitely times for it, but you can't rely on that all the time, especially when there are teams, and there are teams in the American who do have some size. Uh, so definitely would have been an issue. So glad they got a body in there and Elijah Gray. But of course, like I mentioned, they are losing someone, no, that though not a big body in Jordan Riley, who is transferring to East Carolina. Cope, what were your thoughts on this? Were you surprised? Did you think he was going to stay in the draft? I mean, what did you think about Jordan Riley, who really, probably from January on last year, really, really turned it on and became, as I've described him, a baller for Temple?
It surprised me he put his name in the draft. And although people talk about how this isn't a great draft this year, you can't really use that argument for everybody that they should put the name in if it's going to be a bad draft. So, and I thought it did come out of left field that if he would have put his name in the transfer portal, I don't think it would have necessarily surprised me. But the fact he put his name in, and then after he put his name in, said he was putting his name in the portal, keeping his options open. That's what surprised me a little bit. Now, here's the thing, Kyle. In the era of the transfer portal, where we're going to talk about a guy who had committed to one school and then he reverted back to the school he was at. There's so many unknowns. Until you get guys to campus, nothing's finished, nothing's finalized. And as guys fly off the board, it's really hard for coaches just to keep a spot for you, it seems like. Like he left and Adam Fisher already had replaced. Like by the time he withdraws, Jordan Riley takes his name out of the NBA draft and transfers. Adam Fisher's got Jameel Brown, Lynn Greer, and Jamal Mashburn. He's already got his guards filled out. So with the quality of players dwindling as more guys come off the board and as time flies by, like your spot's going to get taken. He can't just hold one for you. And clearly he had no trouble finding able-bodied replacements in these guys. However, I do think East Carolina is a good spot for Jordan Riley because the way that Mike Schwartz plays with Mark Adams on his staff now defensively, they're physical and they're obviously a defensive-minded team. So a guy like Jordan Riley, who has the athletic traits to, I think, be an asset to that defense, and also, I mean, they have not really been a pretty team offensively the last 2 years. Now they had Cam Hayes come in from LSU and Bobby Pettiford come in from Kansas last year, but offensively, Jordan Riley's going to be a top option here, and is going to be a guy that's going to have the ball in his hands quite a bit. So I think for him, it's a good spot because, well, Temple can't really afford to hold a spot for you. If you put your name in the portal, they kind of have to assume you're gone for the most part. There's not many guys where they can just kind of hold your spot because things change. Maybe you lose a commitment, guys start to commit elsewhere. So Adam Fisher's got to do what's for the best from Temple. He replaced Jordan Riley quickly, and then Jordan Riley finds a home where he might play Temple 2 or 3 times next year and be able to get his revenge. But it's a good spot for Jordan Riley in terms of if he wants to be the guy and he wants to have the opportunity to score a lot and do a lot offensively and has, traits that are interesting for the way they want to play defense. I think it's a good fit for him.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we know he can play. He played really, really well for Temple last year, especially as the season went on. Um, but like you said, I mean, you can't guarantee spots for guys anymore with this transfer portal. I mean, it's insane. Um, they brought in 3 really, really capable of guards, good guards, I would even say, to replace him. So unfortunately for Jordan Riley, spot was not there at Temple anymore, but I am happy he found a home in East Carolina, and hopefully it does work out for him. So we wish Jordan Riley the best, and that's all we got to say about that. Scooting a little bit further up Broad Street, North Broad Street specifically, going to LaSalle. Cope, it's not just us scooting up North Broad Street a little bit further because there's someone else who went from Temple up to LaSalle, and that would be Jaleel White. another Big Five transfer, the fourth of this window, which first of all, in its own right, uh, is insane. It's just downright crazy. But Jaleel White going up to LaSalle, going to Fran Dunphy, who he didn't recruit him there, did he? It was Aaron McKee. I'm pretty sure it was Aaron McKee.
There might have been like a 1 year, maybe
Overlap.
there's an overlap in his recruitment, potentially.
That 2019 and on with COVID and everything just kind of all blends together a little bit, especially with all the COVID waivers and COVID transfers and all that stuff. But Jaleel White is going up to LaSalle, and I think this is going to be a good fit for him, Cope. You know, his role at Temple was interesting. He was never, supposed to be a guy who was relied on for scoring. He was a little bit last year just because, as we mentioned, obviously many times throughout last year, Temple wasn't the most talented roster that they've ever had. So he was relied on a little bit more scoring wise, and he came through at times, didn't others. His jump shot's still not developed, but he's a monster on the boards. He plays defense. He's athletic. I think this is going to be a good get for LaSalle, but I want to hear your thoughts on it as well, especially just with the fact that we have yet another inner Big Five transfer here.
Yeah, so it's 4-1 cycle is wild, but that's just the times we live in. That's just the nature of the transfer portal. And although I heard Aaron Bracey say that this is a thing that there was kind of handshake agreement, I guess, between all the Big Five schools where we won't try and recruit your guys, don't try and get ours. The nature of the transfer portal, like this is what it's come to. This is what it is. That freedom of movement. Now it's like the band-aids ripped off and kind of anything goes. But as far as a spot for Jaleel White, not only do I think this is a good fit for him, but he this is a guy that's going to fit a lot of needs and a lot of shortcomings that I thought that LaSalle had last year. This was not a big team at all. I mean, you had Ryan Zan at 6'7" coming in to play the backup center spot. It seemed like between the guards and Rokas Yotsus, there wasn't a lot of in between, big forwards. And another thing I talked about with LaSalle last year is that they lacked athleticism. It's great to have Khalil Brantley who can really get up there and dunk, but to have a guy like it's rare that you have a guy with the vertical Deshaun Shepard, but they didn't really have any vertical pop quite like that outside of him. And now they're losing Khalil Brantley going to Oklahoma State, and they're bringing in the Jaleel White. So now you have a Deshaun Shepard and a Jaleel White. You have two really good athletes at the forward spots, and with some size and some length as well. And like we saw, if you remember, even this is even 2 years ago, Kyle. How about when Temple beat Villanova at the Liacouras Center, and although that was a very short-handed Villanova team, I mean, you had Jaleel White up in Caleb Daniels' grill the whole night.
Yeah.
I mean, you not only have a big athletic forward that is going to, fill some traits that you didn't have last year, but this is also a guy that is going to be able to have an effect on the defensive end. And when you have to go play against a Darren Buchanan Jr. from GW, or you have to go play against a team that's got a bigger forward who can score, you have somebody who can match up with him now from a size, the length, and athleticism standpoint. So I think that's huge as well. But now, like, he's going to have the opportunity to drive to the basket more, to have the ball in his hands more and make things happen there. The problem is he can't shoot. And the shooting has never gotten any better since he's been at Temple. So that could shrink the floor a little bit because you're losing two good shooters in Jameer Brickus and Khalil Brantley. But Anwar Gill couldn't shoot, or he got better. But he's not exactly like a crazy threat from three. But guess what? Like that dude could defend very well. He was a tough dude. Like he could get downhill. And I think Jaleel White can kind of be that same dude. That's like, although he can't shoot, he's an athlete. He's got size. Defensively, he can match up with some bigger players in the conference. Like he's gonna. I think this is just a fit as far as like what LaSalle. There's some things that LaSalle's missing that he can really fit into seamlessly and provide for them. So, yeah, I think this is really good. And then obviously Jaleel White's a Jersey native. He'll be able to not move somewhere far and only go a couple miles up the street and do the reverse of what I did my freshman to sophomore year. So I think it's a good fit. Not only for Jaleel White, if he wants more responsibility, and also for what LaSalle's missing, I really like the fit.
Me too. I think it's a great fit. And it gives him an opportunity to stay local. It gives him opportunity with some familiarity with Fran Dunphy. Obviously he's seen LaSalle every year with Big Five play, so a little bit of familiarity there too as well. I think it's a good fit. I think this is a good decision by him, good decision by the Explorers. and I'm really interested to see how it plays out next year. Cope, not the only transfer that they got though. They also got a commitment from Rider grad transfer Corey McKeithen, who last year averaged about 8 points a game, a little over almost 4 rebounds a game, and 3 assists a game a year ago. Personally, I don't know a ton about him. I don't know a ton about Rider basketball. I don't think they've been all that great in recent memory. So I'm going to rely on you on this one, Cope. What can you tell me about Corey McKeithen transferring from Rider to LaSalle? Also, not going too far. LaSalle or Rider in Jersey, so not too far in its own right.
Yeah, it's in Lawrenceville, Jersey. Very, very nice campus. I was there. I believe it's called Alumni Hall where they play. I saw him play Rick Pitino's Iona team 2 years ago, I believe. And it's funny because that year I thought that was Pitino's best team. He had Tyson Jolly from SMU who played in the AAC. He had Elijah Joyner from Tulsa, who was also an AAC guard. Had Quinn Slazinski, who was at West Virginia last year. Had Nelly Jr. Joseph, who's at New Mexico. Really, really good team. Well, I believe Walter Clayton was there as a freshman. Yeah, Walter Clayton was a freshman on that team who's now was at Florida last year, was a really good player and is now I believe his name is still in the NBA draft. So there's a little tidbit on Ryder there. But getting to Corey McKeithen, most importantly, this is a dude that's played a lot of college basketball. LaSalle needs a veteran guard. If whether it's to start, come off the bench. I mean, you're having Eric Acker, who's was the youngest guy in D1 last year, who's in his second year. Deuce Jones coming in as a freshman. They need experience and they need a guy that's played and can settle them down. He can do a little bit of everything. He can shoot a little bit, can facilitate, rebound, defend. Like they just need a vet. LaSalle needed a veteran presence to kind of calm down and put in for when these young guys are going to inevitably make mistakes, and that's all right. And that's all right. These young guys are going to get a lot of playing time. It looks like, and it's going to be trial by fire with Eric Acker and Deuce Jones, and they certainly have the talent to play and produce. But to add a veteran guard who can come off the bench and give you some really good minutes, I think is huge. So not one that's going to make crazy headlines, but I think this is also a very good get for LaSalle. Just like they need experience. They're losing two very experienced guys who played a lot of years there, and Khalil Brantley and Jameer Brickus. And with that, although Corey McKeithen, this is his first and his only year at LaSalle, having a guy that's got a lot of experience under his belt to go with these young guys, Eric Acker and Deuce Jones, I think it's going to go a long way for them, but the team in general. So not one that's going to shatter the headlines, but I think a necessary get for LaSalle to add a veteran guard.
Yeah, and that's always what we talk about come March, right? I mean, we always talk about veteran guard play in general, but especially veteran guard play, people who can calm the game down, slow the game down, make the right reads. Very, very important. And this is someone who has played a lot of college basketball. That's one thing I do know about him. So definitely an important get for LaSalle, especially losing the guards that they did lose in the transfer portal. Um, I think it'll work out for them, especially also you mentioned Eric Acker being the youngest player in Division I college basketball last year, which is insane. So yeah, good get for LaSalle. Good gets plural for LaSalle, especially with Jaleel White there. All right, we got one more school to go over, Cope. We're gonna head on over to the main line, and we're gonna talk Villanova. I have a feeling this might take us the longest, because there are some things to talk about here, and we cannot go any further down the line without mentioning the craziness that's involved with Max Shulga. So if you're unfamiliar with the sequence of events, Max Shulga was at VCU last year. He played extremely well in the A10 semifinal against St. Joe's and knocked them out. Ultimately, they ended up losing um, to why I don't know why I'm like Duquesne.
Duquesne.
I don't know why that took me so long, Cope. Jesus Christ. I was like Richmond because no, they finished in the first seed last year. No. Max Shulga, very experienced point guard, very good point guard. Put his name in the transfer portal, committed to Villanova, was part of their incoming class along with Jameer Brickus, as we mentioned before. And then just this week of us recording this, he said, actually, I'm gonna go back home. I'm gonna go back to VCU and play in the A10 again. So he's not coming to the main line. He is going back to VCU. Cope, this is huge. In many different ways. Obviously, we could talk about all the basketball things, how Villanova's losing a facilitator, losing a potential scorer, losing a senior leader, someone who's played a lot of college basketball, as you mentioned, with Corey McKeithen for the Sal. But even more than that, I feel like we can't talk about it without talking about kind of I don't want to say the state of Villanova. I think that's like kind of a weird way to put it because they're still a premier program as we know it, but it's definitely raised a little bit of a flag of just kind of the player movement we've seen over the last couple years. Um, I know there's been people in the Big Five and college basketball space that have kind of criticized a little bit the fact that they, at least this transfer cycle, haven't really gotten a ton of like high major guys. They brought in Brookus, they brought in Shulga, seemingly, two A10 guys, and there's definitely people who've been concerned about the fact that they might not be the Villanova that we've been accustomed to. So then for this to happen, definitely kind of doesn't help people's perceptions either. So what can you say about that in particular? And then also on the basketball side, Villanova for next year losing someone who is expected to be one of their best players.
Yeah, so long-winded question there.
I know. I'm sorry.
As far as, the state of Villanova, I don't think this is anything to really reflect about that. I mean, they have a lot of spots to fill. That's what the bottom line is. And the Eric Dixon decision is still looming. Shout out to Jeff Nyberg. Great work as always. He put an article
Yes.
out about this and said that the Dixon decision, it'll be soon. That deadline to take your name out of the NBA draft is coming up. I believe it's May 29th, Kyle. So it's coming up. So a decision is going to have to be made here sooner or later, and could potentially be made by the weekend here. But it didn't seem like there was anything bad as far as Villanova goes. But you look at Max Shulga, and here's the thing: he's played under Ryan Odom essentially his whole career. I mean, he was at Utah State with Ryan Odom. He was at VCU with Ryan Odom. Like he's been attached to him for quite some time. And to be able to spend his last year in college under Ryan Odom at a really good school like VCU, they upped their NIL offer because he had not moved on to Villanova's campus yet, was planning to do that this week or next week. But by the time that NIL offer got upped and he could be with the coach that he's comfortable with and has had a lot of success with, um, I guess on his part, Kyle, it does kind of seem like it's a no-brainer to go back there.
Yeah.
Now, as far as Villanova goes, this was their biggest transfer that they had coming in. It was the highest rated guy they had coming in that had the most success, had played in NCAA tournaments, plays very under control, can shoot. He can score. He's a very good 3-point shooter, can facilitate. You can't speed this guy up. He lets the game come to him. He plays very, very under control. And as a scorer and a playmaker, getting a guy like this was a really big get and was the best, rated as the best transfer that they were bringing in. So you lose him, and that puts a big hit, a big hit on where your transfer class is ranked here. And they're going to have, I think they have 4 or 5 spots here, depending on what Eric Dixon does. So that's what the biggest concern is that Villanova's been in on a lot of guys. It feels like even more so than last year.
Yeah.
They've been in on even more. I mean, from the jump, as soon as guys put their name in, they were in on the Dakota LeFew. They were in on Toby Awaka. They were in on all these guys. And it just like whip, Andrew Carr. And they just haven't been able to reel anybody in yet besides the 2 Philly guys and Jameer Brickus and Tyler Perkins. So that, I think, is what's the most worrying to me, is just the fact that they still have quite a few spots left, and names are starting to dwindle. Nobody else is going to put their name in. Like, who's there is who's there, and that's who they're going to have to fill their team with. So it's concerning as far as how many spots they have, because last year it seemed like they wrapped things up pretty quick. I mean, after getting Tyler Burton and Lance Ware, it seemed like later in the process, like they made quick work early of getting guys. But there's a lot of spots to fill. I think Mark Armstrong leaving for the NBA draft and forgoing his college eligibility kind of threw a wrench in that as well. But yeah, they have a lot of work to do. And losing Shulga, like, he, as a guy who was projected to probably start and play a big role, I mean, losing a guy like that is big, because there's not many guys that are his caliber that are still out there. So, obviously a big loss for them, but for Shulga, like, I totally understand, like, why it makes sense for him. And plus, with an upped NIL offer, and the reason I said, things aren't official until you get to campus is because VCU actually was in a situation similar to this. They got Jamari Thomas from, I believe, it was Norfolk State, and he was just MEAC Player of the Year. Commits to VCU. In like a week, he's at South Carolina. He's committed there. because they had upped an NIL offer to him and kind of poached him. So nothing's official till you're moved in, you're on campus, and there's no really going back. Um, but it's unfortunate because it seemed like for a couple of weeks now, this is a guy that was going to be brought in for Villanova and was going to contribute a lot. And now to lose him pretty abruptly late in the process, it's challenging because we still don't know. It's kind of hard to put judgment on what this team's going to look like because there's still so many spots open. And there's young players, and Jordan Dumont's coming off a red shirt, and there's 3 freshmen. It's kind of hard to judge on what this team could be right now because it's not nearly finished yet.
No, no, it's not finished at all. And yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna say I blame Max Shulga. I mean, he went back where he was comfortable. He went back to the coach that he loved. Uh, and he's probably got a little more money than he thought he was going to. So I can't blame him. Nothing in this argument was that I blame Max Shulga for going back to VCU. It just does suck that Villanova has to seemingly lose out on another guy who was already going to be there, it seemed like. So hopefully they can correct it with some of the guys that are still in the portal. I know there's some names being flown out there. Hopefully by the time we record next, we'll have some answers for you. But until then, we're just gonna have to move on. Because there's another guard, Cope, that you did mention during your answer that we should talk about a little bit, and that's Mark Armstrong, who, to our surprise, declared for the NBA draft, and he decided he's going to stay there. He's going to forego the rest of his college eligibility, and he's going to enter the NBA draft. And I know we mentioned before that, yes, this is one of the weaker draft classes I think we've seen in our life. But I don't know, Cope. I don't know if this was the right decision. And, great respect for Mark Armstrong. I'm glad that he felt confident enough to enter the draft. He's a very talented player. We saw it. Definitely might not have been consistent enough at times, but he definitely showed flashes of being a really great player. But only after his sophomore year, where he came off the bench a lot of the year, and like I said, there was flashes, but it wasn't as consistent, I think, as we might have liked. This definitely surprised me, and it seems like it surprised you too that he kept his name in the draft.
Yeah, it's surprising because I really thought he was going to make a seismic leap this year. I had him as my most improved player in the Big Five, and it wasn't. It never kind of came around that way. The shooting and the scoring was streaky, but it's funny because I hear people say that I talked about this with Aaron Bracey. I saw Hoops Weiss tweet about this. Like his game might actually be better suited for the NBA. As weird as that sounds, like he has some traits that really translate. Like he's quick, he's athletic. The shooting streaky, which is a huge problem and is going to need to be consistent if he's going to play in the NBA. But as a guy who can defend, who's got a good vertical, who can get up there, like he certainly has some traits to be excited about at the NBA level. Um, but it was surprising to me because he he didn't take that leap. If he had taken the leap that I thought he was going to make, then I think you're looking at a different story here. But was still baffled a little bit because I thought he could have come back, and yeah, they brought in Jameer Brickus, but there's certainly still a role for Mark Armstrong on this team. He still could have played a lot, and it would have been another year under his belt where he could have improved his game, and then maybe we can revisit the NBA draft next season. But yeah, I'm still a little bit confused by this, but I hear people say that his game might be better suited for the NBA. And I definitely see where they're coming from. There's traits in his game that are intriguing at the next level. He just got to be consistent and put all that stuff together. But played pretty well at G League Elite Camp. So good for him, and hopefully something comes out of it. At the very least, this will be a summer league guy who will at least have a shot. He'll at least have a shot to maybe make a training camp roster, and give himself a chance. So we'll see. The draft is, what you got just over a month.
Yeah.
Just over a month until we see what happens with Mark Armstrong. But yeah, I mean, bottom line was I was confused by this because his play not being up to what people thought, and also still having a role in this team, especially now that you see where the roster is now. I mean, he certainly would have had a big role in this team this year. Confused me a little bit.
Me as well, Cope. Me as well. I definitely think he would have had a huge role this year. Um, he would have had the keys. I mean, he's would have been the only one that's been in the offense for a few years, and like guard wise, lead guard wise, especially. I it definitely confused me. He has traits, as you mentioned. He definitely has traits. I think he can be successful as a professional. I just don't think he was fully developed yet. I think probably another year. If he did obviously didn't take the leap that we thought he would in his sophomore year. I think another year just would have benefited. And that happens to some players, some talented players. Like it sometimes you just need another year. And I thought he was one of those players. I hope he proves us wrong, but I do think it was a little bit confusing, a little bit surprising that he kept his name in the draft. But best of luck to Mark Armstrong. We do wish him the best nonetheless. And I do hope it proves us wrong. Maybe we can have someone else be on the Knicks. Villanova Knicks action there. We know how that works out. Um, I'm still not really 100% ready to talk about it yet, but it's fine. All right. Got one more person to go over, Cope, before we wrap up this silly little podcast. And you mentioned that Villanova's been in on some guys when we were talking about Max Shulga that they've missed out on. And another one was a familiar face to the Big Five, and that would be former Arkansas guard and more importantly, former Temple guard, and of course, former Butler guard, Caleb Battle, who Villanova was in his final three. He ended up choosing Gonzaga over Villanova and Kansas State as well. So he will be heading way out west, way up north to Spokane. I know you are very fond of Gonzaga, so this should be fun for you. Um, but nonetheless, Mark Few obviously has Gonzaga year in, year out as a top flight program, top mid major, which I don't even think you can consider them mid major anymore. We're far past that. In the technicality of the league that they are in, yes, but they are far past being a mid major. They are a premier college basketball program over the last 15 to 20 years. So Cope, Caleb Battle, who, as we know, is an extremely talented scorer. He is now in his fifth year. Um, Played at Arkansas last year. Didn't necessarily work out for the Razorbacks with some of the transfers that they brought in. I know we both thought they'd be a lot better. Eric Musselman left. John Calipari came in. Caleb Battle, excuse me. I said Brantley. Wow. Um, Caleb Battle decided to go. He's going to Gonzaga now. What do you make of this move? How do you think you'll fit in playing on the West Coast at Gonzaga and with Mark Few in particular?
Well, it's probably a guy that's going to come off the bench and be a spark plug scorer for Gonzaga. And when you look at the league they're in, St. Mary's lost Dave Mahaney. Um, Loyola Marymount's been kind of up and down. I mean, they've been pretty solid and competitive, but there's a lot of other programs that just, San Francisco has been good, and Jonathan Mobo is probably going to, they're probably going to put a guy in the pros, but it's not the SEC, and it's not the AAC, and it's not the Big East either. Like, this is a league where, as a scorer, he's going to get his. He is going to get his in this league. But I'll be honest, I think if you're Villanova, as much as you need a scorer, do you need a score that bad that comes with a little baggage that may not fit your culture and your identity? Because when his situation at Temple, when he was leaving the team, when, he was tweeting stuff out after games, even though he tweeted out laughing emojis after McKee basically said that he got, he played the guys we wanted to in a game that we totally thought, I believe it was the Wagner loss or the Vanderbilt loss, that we thought we'd see Caleb Battle in the game for, and he wasn't. And, he tweeted some laughing emojis after the game. Like, there was a couple incidents where, he left the team and he didn't play in the AAC tournament the one year. It didn't seem like he left Temple on the best accord. And the problem with that is when you see as good of a player he is, as talented as he is, but you see him light up Houston, when you see him light up USC his first year at Temple or second year at Temple, like, it's enticing to bring a guy in like that who can get buckets, because there's not many guys that can do it like him that were on the portal this year. But is that a culture fit for a program like Villanova that prides himself on that? And I don't think it is. I don't think it is. So as much as Villanova could use his skill set and his scoring, I think this is actually for the best. They didn't bring him in because at Gonzaga, like, look, Mark Few, like, he's not going to change anything he's doing for him. Like, I think he can straighten him out, and this is a good place to be with a veteran coach who's made 9 straight Sweet 16s. Has been a model for consistency, and even for in a down year last year with Gonzaga, where they were almost in it, they were trending on being an NIT team at one point. And
Yeah.
then they go to Kentucky, they win at Kentucky, they rattle off a bunch of wins, they beat St. Mary's at St. Mary's, until they lost to them in the uh, West Coast Conference Championship game. Then they beat the doors off McNeese, they beat the doors off Kansas. Like they still make a Sweet 16. Like I think Mark Few can hone him in enough that this is a good spot because his scoring is needed off the bench, and in a conference like the WCC, he's going to get his. Like I said, this guy's going to get buckets. You're going to see him when it against a San Diego or a Pacific or a Pepperdine or a school like the schools like that. You're going to be like, holy cow, that guy had how many points? He's going to be a nice spark plug for them, being able to create offense.
Yeah, it is a very top-heavy conference there in the WCC. It's really just been Gonzaga. It's been St. Mary's and San Francisco. I think the last couple years has been pretty good too. But he's gonna get his, like you said. He's one thing that's never been questioned about Caleb Battle is that he is a talented scorer. I mean, especially we saw it in that game against Houston, who were the number one defense in the country. They were the number one team in the country at the time when they visited the league course, or when they visited the league course center, it was after Temple had beaten them, and he was going off in that first half, making shots from looked like behind the backboard, in the corner behind the 3-point line. I mean, it was a display. There's no question about his ability to score the basketball. There has been some other things that don't want to speculate because it's never right to do that, but it seems like things weren't always easy there at Temple for Caleb Battle. So definitely something to consider for all the schools that were courting him. If there's anyone who I think can hopefully deal with the things that seem like they might have been there, it is Mark Few. But I think I have to agree with you that Villanova might have been best off leaving this one go and losing this battle. Even though we talked about their needs for guards, obviously with Shulga now, it makes it a little worse. But uh, I hope he succeeds at Gonzaga. I really, really do. I think it can be a good spot for him. And he is going to get buckets in that conference. That is for damn sure. Um, all right, Cope. Well, that's pretty much it. I know we had a lot to go over, a few weeks of transfers uh, to go over here. But do you have any final thoughts before we sign off?
No, everybody have a great more. Well,
This is
this
gonna come out
episode will
after
come out
Memorial Day,
after
yeah.
Memorial Day, but I hope everybody did have a good Memorial Day weekend. I'm headed out to Phoenix for a wedding. Kyle, you're traveling, so hope everybody had a fun weekend if you're going down the shore. But we'll be back with some more, and be sure to listen to that episode with John Dunleavy. That will already be out by the time that this comes out because it'll be a really really good conversation. And then we'll have some more stuff planned as the summer goes on here. But let's go, Phils. Let's have a summer.
I can agree with almost everything you said. Maybe not one of those last points, but yes, hopefully everybody had a great Memorial Day weekend. Hopefully everyone was safe. Personally, I think the beach gets a little too crowded on holiday weekends, and I don't like being down there. We were down there the week before. It was great. Uh, I wouldn't say it was crowded. There were some people there, but it was nice and chill in Seattle City, New Jersey. Um, my final thought is that this is the first time I think I've been on the pod during the month of May, which is kind of crazy. Life has been very, very crazy lately. Coast's been holding it down, which I very much appreciate. Um, but as you all know, as I try to talk about on this podcast and the podcast I've had before, that May is Mental Health Awareness Month. So, not that I have, a lot to say. I feel like there's definitely more people out there who can contribute to this more than I can, but mental health is extremely important. So I think definitely don't ever be shy to talk about your mental health. Don't ever be shy to let someone know how you're feeling, whether it's good, whether it's bad, whether it's indifferent, anything you're feeling. Don't be afraid to put it out there. There's definitely people out there who are willing to listen, whether that's loved ones, whether that's professionals. Don't ever be afraid to try therapy too. I've heard therapy's awesome. I've never tried it myself, but I do kind of want to. I think it would be good. Would love to figure a little bit more about myself. So definitely don't ever be afraid to try that. Um, and just be in tune with yourself. I think that's the most important thing. Life can get a little crazy. There's a lot of things that go on in every aspect of people's lives, and it can get overwhelming. So don't be afraid to be in tune with yourself and know how you're feeling. And then if you do need to talk to someone, go talk to someone because bottling things up, especially in men, um, bottling things up is a recipe for disaster at some point. Can be fine for a while until it's not. And unfortunately, you don't want to get to that point. So don't ever be afraid to talk about it. Definitely stay in tune with your mental health. So I just want to say that I try to say something every year for Mental Health Awareness Month. I know this is the end of the month this time, because things have been a little crazy for your boy too. So not in a bad way, of course. Union, we're doing a lot of stuff. We got a lot of content. We got a lot of games. We'll hopefully bring back 3 points after this releases in Charlotte this weekend. But just wanted to say that during Mental Health Awareness Month while it is still here. So that's me. I know it's a little soliloquy there, but definitely want to get that out there, excuse me. So yeah, and I wish I could say let's go Knicks. Unfortunately, that did end uh last week, so we're gonna have to cope with that. But Rangers still in it, Eastern Conference Finals. At the time of this recording, they're down 1-0. Hopefully, we get 2 more games after that. So we'll see what happens there. And I want to say let's go Mets, but I don't even want to talk about them, Cope. They are bad. The June hasn't even happened yet. The swoon is currently happening. They're 9-20 in the month of May. No, that's not how that. We've played a few doubleheaders. I don't know exactly what the record is, but it's not good. They're 9-20 in the last 29 as of this recording. That's what it is. Um, so yeah, not good. Not good. But anyway. With that being said, thank you so much for tuning in. As always, make sure you like and subscribe on our YouTube channel, and of course, tune into all these past videos that we've done. Make sure you follow us on social media at Big Five Pod on Instagram and Twitter. And of course, for the audio only versions, make sure you check out Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Felt good to be back, Hope. Very excited for the summer, even though it's not going to be as much, but slowly but surely, we're going to have things happening, and then we'll have a season before you know it. So until then, see you next time.